Namaskara, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the resource persons and participants for second session on editing of 1 week online FTP on exemplary practices,
Professor
teaching
Shambuli,
and learning and
one
evaluation
second,
of
one second.
computer science and information technology.
Sorry to
Jointly
interrupt.
organized by Vishweshwaraya Technological University's Center for
Jubangi.
Teaching Studies, Kalburgi, and Indian Institute of Information Technology, Allahabad. I request all the participants to mute their audio and video. Now the session will be taken over by Shubhangi Ma'am.
Shubhangi madam.
Good afternoon to all.
Madam.
I am honored to
Sir wants
introduce
to
today's distinguished panelists and panel coordinator. So the first panelist for the panel discussion session is a strong academician and true researcher, Dr. Subhash Kulkarni sir. Dr. Subhash Kulkarni, working as a principal at PESIT Bangalore, South Campus, Bangalore, is having a wide administrative experience for past 14 years. He is also a true academician and researcher. He is a passionate teacher with 31 years of experience. Sir obtained his BE in ECE in 1988 from the PDA College of Engineering, Gulbarga, and Sir has secured the third rank to the Gulbarga University. He obtained his MTech degree in Electronics Design and Technology from CEBT, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore in 1995. Sir was very fortunate to work under Professor B.N. Chatterjee at IIT Kharagpur towards the PhD. He obtained the PhD degree in the year 2002 from Professor B.N. Chatterjee is a pioneer in image processing. Dr. Subhash Kulkarni research interest includes image processing, control systems, and fast architectures using Vedic maths. He has successfully guided 9 PhD scholars, has published more than 110 research papers in journals and conferences, seeded and conducted more than a dozen short-term courses in signal and image processing, especially math modeling in a signal processing. Sir has conducted tutorials in international conferences, delivered more than 50 invited lectures in conferences, workshops, and symposiums. Sir is a fellow of IET and fellow of IE. Apart from teaching in engineering courses, he is also teacher and senior faculty in Art of Living since 2012. Art of Living is founded by His Holiness Sri Sri Ravi Shankar Sirji. Inspired by Sri Sri, he has been taking forward the knowledge and wisdom as an instrument of the divine to the people, teaching the powerful Sudarshan Kriya Yoga that has connected more than 40 crore peoples across 156 countries and is ever growing. Sudarshan Kriya Yoga is gifted to the humanity by H.S. Sri 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 in 1981. Motto of his life, as inspired by Sri 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 Ravi Shankar Sirji, has been "Life is a celebration, just celebrate it." Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation as a panelist. It's my honor to introduce one more panelist, Dr. Murli Yes, sir. Presently, sir is a president of 2 engineering colleges, degree colleges, 2 PUC colleges, high school, 2 MBA institutes, and professor in computer science. Sir has completed his BE, MTech, MBA, and PhD. Sir has a total 30 years of teaching experience. Under the guidance of Sir, 16 PhD candidates has been awarded by the degree, and still 6 more candidates are pursuing their degree. Sir published more than 250 research papers in international journals and conferences. Sir has conducted several conferences and workshops in image processing related areas like computer vision. Sir has delivered more than 100 guest lectures at various institutes and carried out 12 research projects funded by various funding agencies. Sir is having the patent in computer vision related to the depth estimation. Area of research is computer vision and image processing. Sir is a president of Kala Tapsi, an art school, managing director of Riverview Hospital, and managing director of Mysore Paka. Sir is worked as a chairman of Board of Studies and Board of Exams of VTU and Mysore University for computer science. As well as Sir was the National Board Accreditation Expert, National Advisory Panel at LIC India for 2 terms, and worked as Academic Council member University of Mysore as a governor nominee. Sir has received the Best IEEE Research Award as well as the Dakshin Kesari Award, Software Ratnakara Award, Manda Zilla Sahitya Parishad Award, Pandavpura Taluka Sahitya Parishad Award. Sir is interested in the philosophy. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. And once again, I will welcome you to the panel discussion. It is my pleasure to introduce one more panelist, Dr. Satish Kumar, sir. Dr. Satish Kumar Singh is an associate professor with the Indian Institute of Information Technology, Allahabad, Prayagraj, India. Sir received the PhD, MTech and BTech degree in the year 2010, 2005 and 2003 respectively. Sir has over 15 years of experience in academic and research institutions. Sir has authored over 70 publications in reputed international journal and conference proceedings. Sir is a fellow of Institution of Engineers, fellow of IET, senior member of IEEE, and member of International Association of Pattern Recognition Research. Sir is the Vice Chair of IEEE India Council and IEEE Uttar Pradesh section. Currently, he is serving as a Secretary, Signal Processing Society, Chapter IEEE, Uttar Pradesh section, as well as others. Sir is an editor in Neural Computing and Application, special issue on computer vision and image processing, and guest editor of a Springer Nature Computer Science special issue on recent trends in computer vision and progress in the image processing. His current research interests are in the areas of digital image processing, image compression, signal processing, pattern recognition, multimedia data indexing, and retrieval, watermarking, and biometric. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. And once again, I will welcome to the panel discussion. It's my privilege to introduce to the panel coordinator of today's panel discussion, Dr. Sahana D. Gowda, madam. Madam is a professor and head of the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at BNM Institute of Technology, Bangalore. Madam's area of expert is computer architecture, image processing, pattern recognition, computer vision, soft computing, and data mining. Under the madam's guidance, 2 students has been completed their PhD and 3 more are pursuing their PhDs. Madam has received several awards. Few of them they are Accenture Start Achiever Award in the year 2019 from Accenture Bangalore. Madam has received 3 times the Best Teacher Award in the year 2018, 2017 and 2016 from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at BNMIT Bangalore. Ma'am has received the Dr. Abdul Kalam Lifetime Achievement National Award for remarkable achievements in the field of teaching, research and publications, International Institute for Social and Economic Reforms in the year 2017. Ma'am has published more than 10 international journal papers as well as more than 17 international conference papers. Madam has received the grants for the projects from the VTU as well as from the VHGST as well as from the DST. Thanks, Mom, for accepting our invitation as a panel coordinator, and I welcome you all once again. Thank you. Over to Shambhu, sir.
Thank you, madam. Now I request Professor Sahana Gowda, Professor and Head of the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, BNMIT, Bangalore, to take over the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam, for the introduction of our panel experts and myself to this august gathering. Today, we know that education is not for just getting the knowledge. It is for triggering the young minds how to think about. I'm sure this faculty development program, which is set to facilitate the teachers to know how exactly we should trigger the young minds today. And as we have already known that the participants had shared their queries through before the FDP, so that it would really facilitate us to give a deep discussion on to what exactly is required for teachers today to do a progressive learning and teaching process in the colleges, right? And we also know that this faculty development program is a breakthrough from all the faculty development programs that we're organizing with the technical buzzwords like data science, image processing, and all these things. So as teachers, we have got to understand today that we have learned, we have to unlearn, and we have to relearn to what is required today for the students, right? So we have 3 panelists So Dr. Subhash Kulkarni, Dr. Murli S, and Dr. Satish Kumar. And our concentration in the panel discussion is more on seeking into how the transformation of teaching would happen in the core areas of computer science and engineering and IT. So basically, our target is on the three domains: maths and CS and IT, and algorithms, data structures, and computer organization. So our first panel expert, Dr. Subhash Kulkarni sir, will be presenting on how to set the Bloom levels. I think we are very sure today because of, it's not just because of the accreditation process or the committee that visits us, that the standards we set in our teaching and learning process that is really required for. So over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes, sir. Yes.
before starting off, in the capacity of organizing chair, I welcome you all. At the same time, I also thank every one of you for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts at this particular place. Can I request Sudhir to shut the mic, please? Yeah, thank you. So let me start off the presentation here. Is the screen visible now? Slides visible?
Yes. Now it is visible.
Okay. So let me just give a thought here. It's all about my perceptions here. It's individual perception, nothing to take it as a standard, because teaching and learning has always been a personalized character of a teacher. Okay. My belief is that it cannot be put in a standardized way. But yes, there are certain principles, there are certain objectives that are to be met. So the topic here for me is TLE, teaching, learning, and evaluation, measurements, principles, and outcome. Let me go straight. People talk a lot about Bloom's taxonomy. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but the first three layers are the one, remembering and understanding and applying. This is the one where the teacher is supposed to deliver aspects such that the learning happens from this, and the outcome of this learning is something like analysis ability, evaluation ability, and creative ability. And I believe that teacher is also a learner in the process other than student. Okay, this is on one side, which has come up with setting some metrics for measuring. Okay, at the same time, there is something which we should know, a renowned aspect. There are 5 aspects or principles of education. This has been the heritage of India. Okay, from the heritage it's been borrowed. Let me clearly put these 5 aspects here. One is information is an aspect of education. Second is concepts. Third is attitude. Fourth is imagination, and fifth is freedom. Okay, nowadays we are bombarded, students and we also are bombarded by only information, but it is only an aspect of education. Converting the information is the main key here. Then concepts are also important. Okay, you need to conceive in order to create. So this is an important principle of education which we need to be aware. And attitude is something very tricky. So it's not about bad attitude or right attitude. What has to be seen is a proper attitude at the right time and place determines your actions and behavior. I can accept a student in my class as a student with good attitude, but I don't mind he being having bad attitude outside the class. So that's how it is. It is connected with time and place. Then fourth principle is imagination. Imagination is essential for creativity. Excessive imagination may end up becoming psychotic. Yes, for these 4 principles to nurture, freedom is absolute necessary. To put in a nutshell, without freedom, attitude becomes stifling, concept become a burden, information is of no value, and imagination becomes stagnant. So these principles and the Bloom's taxonomy, measuring outcomes, are to be mixed up in a probably acceptable way. Okay, the challenges in TLE is teaching is an art and uniquely characterizes every teacher. That we know very well. Learning is student-centric. Student acceptance and wisdom are supreme than intellectual ability of the teacher. This has to be inculcated in the teachers, and I believe every teacher does it. Okay, so need not be non-judgmental for any student. A true teacher is a learner first. This is also, we know it. In the journey of teaching and learning, evaluation is rarely seen as a reinforcing activity. So that's why this debate is going on. So can we do reverse engineering? Looking at evaluation, can we look what changes can be incorporated in teaching learning? This is the sole objective of this FDP. knowledge acquired needs to be demonstrable. That's the absolute thing. Now, learning, I can put learning, teaching, and evaluation in one sentence here, which says learning is an activity supported by teaching and demonstrated through evaluation. So how we can achieve the stated objective? Number one is integrating education principles or aspects into TLE outcomes. Another possibly evaluation with measurable, visible outcomes, testing acquired skill and knowledge has to be set on high priority. Okay. Then coming to math in CSE, this is very interesting. Many people come to me and say, because there is no maths, I choose CSE. And some people say, oh, maths, second year over, yeah, now we're comfortable. I don't accept that. Let us accept this in our Stapatya Veda, this particular statement comes. Yatha Shikha Mayuranam Naganam Manayo Yatha Tad Vedanga Shastranam Ganitam Murdani Vartate. Okay, like the crowning crest of a peacock and the shining gem in the cobra's hood, mathematics is the supreme Vedanga Shastra, and it is there in every discipline of existence as well as engineering, I can say. So math in computer science are basically categorized under proof, structures, and counting and probability. This is where I want to bring in where maths is into CSE. Okay. So as of now, this is what is going on. Proof, structures, counting, and probability. I'm not an author in computer science, but yes, I made little attempt to find out what maths is in CSE. Okay. Let me submit before you. I'm a person from electronics side, but yes, I have passion in teaching. That's a thing which has made me to talk about this also. So little bit about proof structures you all very well know. I'm just putting it here. Let me not read it out here. This is a reference from what I got from MIT Professor Layton and Mayer. Discrete maths is the one which is considered to be difficult in mathematics. And discrete maths is combination of all these whatever four we have been seeing. Now, we should understand that mathematics lays the foundation to algorithm, analytical skills, acquirement, and conceptual. I need not give any proof for this because yesterday we had an enlightening talk by Professor P. Nagbhushan on this. So I need not talk. Even in algorithm, huge mathematics is hidden into that. The latest buzzwords, AI, ML, data analytics, have been influencing the technology and are looked at most trending fields in young minds and corporates. Okay, let me now touch upon what is that AI, ML, data analytics consists of as far as mathematics is concerned. I did some research on that and got something like this. Linear algebra, multivariate calculus, optimization, probability, and statistical theory have been fundamental requirements to enhance artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data analysis. Okay, this one line should be sufficient for me to say that mathematics is the core in computer science now. Let me tell you about something about math modeling, a fundamental way how modeling is done using mathematics. Okay, so some basic approaches that we follow in modeling is if a relationship is known or a known relationship, if I see, then we employ algebraic and arithmetic model. In discrete domain, linear models are preferred. That's an additional condition we put it. In sample space, if there are events that are random, then statistical and probabilistic tools are used to extract unique features, which in turn is subjected to similarity-based grouping or classification. Okay, so we resort to mathematical division, which is statistics and probability. And another one, when the sample activity or event are dynamic, they are changing continuously, then differential models are preferred, especially like PDEs, differential geometry discipline like curvature, eigenvectors, and others. So CS and IT relies more on building algorithms with applied maths using approximated or constrained pure maths, okay, or statistical descriptors based features, feature building, and classification. Okay. Let me close this particular session by a simple observation here. So this is a beautiful square, okay, which is divided into the side as A plus B and A plus B. Why I took this example is CS is supporting to demonstrate this abstract mathematics. Okay, so CS is supporting in visualizing this maths. So A plus B is equal to A plus B whole square is A square plus 2AB plus B square. We know very well. But to visualize in computer science, we need to look at it as A plus B whole square is made up of one square whose side is A, another square whose side is B, another square whose side one is A and another is B. So that's it. So two rectangles and two squares make A plus B whole square. So this visualization is properly demonstrated using the support of CS for mathematics. That means CS is the core for converting abstractness to visualization. Okay. Then another one where I'm putting a challenging problem for computer science people. See, I have an object at the center, okay, and I have an evolving curve C1. If C1 is made to move on its own and sit on the boundary of the object, okay, the simplest thing I need to know is I have to create a list for C1, which will have the indices of the points on the curve, okay. But as the C1 evolves, I have a problem where the list keeps changing its size. So how do I dynamically take this particular into account? So dynamic list, how do I take this into account and model? That's a big challenge which you need to look at. So therefore, dynamic modeling is one which throws a big challenge. So there are algorithms which we need to think a lot about this. Again, CS support comes. Okay. So this is second example where CS requires maths. Okay. In the previous one, CS is supporting maths, but here for CS, we require heavy understanding of maths and converting into algorithm. Okay. So let me conclude. Mathematics is the bedrock of any contemporary discipline of science. A deeper mathematical perspective has a deep influence on careers in computer science. Okay. As the world is seen from collection and accumulation of data perspective, seeking behavioral clues or trends have always been research objective. Voluminous data hardly carry identity as a signal that has closed form representation. Hence, working with randomness has been the order of the problem, necessitating linear algebra, statistics, and probability theory foundations. Okay. So, with this brief introduction, that's my perspective of understanding about this mathematics in CSIT. Now I hand it over to the panel coordinator, Dr. Sahana Gowda, please.
Thank you for the presentation, sir. So the initial statement which you said that teacher has a characteristic evolution within them to teach the students. So it is a unique pattern the teacher should portray to say that how he or she can drive the class in making it much more interesting. And also we understand with the presentation that computer science is nothing but all engineers are talking mathematicians where we apply maths and we get into the solutions also. And it is also the abstract which brings into visualization what we are doing. So further to, we have next Dr. Murali S. Sir, kindly, over to you, sir.
Good afternoon to all of you. Am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes.
please go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I should thank organizers, VTU and IIIT Allahabad for giving me an opportunity. And special thanks to Professor Nagbhushan, Professor KCG and BN Chatterjee, Subhash Kulkarni and other faculty members, other professors. I just recall the days at which we, Professor Nagbhushan, take all of us to various institutes for speaking, listening to him and all. Now I'm again recalling my old days. Professor Nagbhushan is there in front of us, looking at how exactly his students are presenting in front of him. So that is the speciality of any teacher. And more than anything, actually, when Devagowda was there as a chief prime minister for 1 year, almost he made visit 90 times to Karnataka. Like that, Professor Nagbhushan, though sitting at Allahabad, always his mind, his heart will be there at Karnataka. So therefore, always would like to shower down all his knowledge always with VTU. So thanks to Professor Nagbhushan for making this opportunity. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Please go ahead.
Actually, I've been asked to talk about computer science, specifically with CS, data structure and algorithm topic, which I'll be taking up for third semester students. But as a president of the college, I've been seeing that actually there is a great difficulty in convincing people, switch over from computer science to information science. CS and IS, though how many number of times we say that actually they are same, people are not getting convinced. They say actually give seat only to computer science, not to information science. So I request all the teachers to become information science, IS through computer science, and that means CS. common sense teacher, please become intelligent sowing, carriers. So become IS from CS. This is what I wanted to convey in the beginning. The first few slides are specifically to any subject for that matter. Later, I'll be giving little bit of points about data structure and algorithms, which I'll be following in my class. One of the special mantra that all of us we should understand is actually stay at least one step ahead of your students. See, in today's context, a lot of things are available in the internet. If that is the case, you should be little bit ahead of the students. Otherwise, if you are there 1 hour senior to the students, so then you'll be becoming a laughing stock in front of the students, especially in today's context, because students are exposed with a lot of information much ahead of teachers. So therefore, in any subject for that matter, you should be always step ahead of the students. Second thing that I observed, we have to teach honesty to the students. What sort of honesty? Honesty we should tell them, especially with respect to data structure and algorithms. I am very happy that actually the panel have been kept such a way that today people are talking about for third and fourth semester. So tomorrow people will be talking about third year, like that. Actually, I never imagined even this type of panel discussion can be possible. So I'm just telling you, especially when you teach honesty, especially at the third semester and fourth semester level, so people will certainly follow you. You should convince them, saying that actually don't copy solution from internet. Actually, we are here to give you solutions. Discuss problem with the friends. So this is what they're supposed to do. Let them mention their names from where they are copied. People should migrate from copyright. People used to say copyright. That's actually, most of the people talk about copyright. Now actually everyone says copying is our right. So everybody does copying. Now we should come into a stage where copy is left. Nobody is, doing copy. So we should migrate from copyright, then copying right what it is there right now, then copy left. Actually, nobody should do copying. So that is what actually we need to migrate from right to left. And we should start inculcating honesty with the students. Actually, I have observed, I have taken oath with the students saying that please don't copy. You are worried about marks. Even if you write 50%, actually I'm ready to give marks. So let us try to give these kind of confidence with the students. Most of the students are copying only because they need to get marks. Even if they studied little bit, 50%, you should convince them that actually I will give you marks, don't worry, but you write by yourself. I have tested with my own students. Actually, you try to do by yourself. So this will certainly to be inculcated at a very low level. And next important thing is actually be connect with a lot of students. So one of the things that we need to do is actually we need to get connected with the other computer science teachers. So this is the best example. Now actually there is a forum of 150 members coming through Google Meet, and 150 members are there in YouTube. I've seen actually even 300 members actually should start discussing, start debating about computer science teaching. One is actually connect with the teachers. Second thing is actually connect with the students. Most of us were connected with the students, but I have a different mechanism. I have got a different proposal to all of you. Try to identify 2 or 3 patta shishyas. It means they are, you should be able to, put your hands on the shoulder, not physically. I'm just telling you the way in which you connect to them. Actually, you identify some 5, 6 or 4, 5 patta shishyas. If you say that, if you feel that actually you are getting biased, actually try to have a model wise monitors. In our earlier days, actually when we were studying in government schools and all, our teacher is to identify some monitors. Instead of teacher, this monitor used to look after the class. Like that, identify 2 or 3 patta shishyas for every module. For example, in VTU syllabus we have 5 modules. So 5 into 3, 15 patta shishyas you will be having in the class. You try to give more problems to those people, they will solve on behalf of you. So therefore, you will be, basically giving confidence to some people. And apart from that, actually, you are also, helping them to become, independent thinkers. So this is what actually the second thing that we need to do with respect to connect. The third thing is actually connect with the classroom. So classroom in the sense, you allow people to do mistakes. Actually, a lot of students do mistakes. Don't punish them. Don't try to make something mockery in the class. So making students to make fun in the class makes one thing actually fun, that makes the classroom little bit lively. And more than anything, actually, when you go there and correct with them, actually support culture will be developing in the class. Make question kings. Actually, what does it mean? Actually, I'm having a practice in so many years that every student should ask nowadays actually you can just look at the transformation. Earlier many of the students used to ask questions. Now nobody is asking questions. So how to make students to ask questions? You can make them a round robin mechanism. Round robin mechanism means actually today I'm taking 1 hour class, means roll number 1, 2, 3, 4 should ask question to me. Any question related to data structure. If you are teaching algorithms, it's fine. If you are teaching mathematics, it is fine. Let them, these 4 students, let them ask any fundamental question. You are helping them to stand up in the class, helping them. Next day it is 5, 6, 7, 8. So by the time actually when you complete all the students, you will be asking everyone, you will be at least encouraging everyone to participate in the question answers. And so that's how you can bring confidence to the students. Coming to the data structure subject, actually, see, you need to follow breadth first versus depth first. It is not the algorithm I am now telling you. Breadth first versus depth first means, if you look at internet or any textbook, actually thousands of questions you get in data structures. Lot of simple questions, touching all of them at the surface level. So if you really look at 500 questions in data structure, you get it actually. So another approach is actually depth first, wherein which you will be going very, very deep, and there are a lot of tough questions are there. I suggest you to just go for a most realistic, which is not even breadth first. Breadth first means touching all that, all sort of problems actually at a very, very surface level, or going very, very deeper actually. A lot of tough that at third semester people will not understand. I suggest all of you to go for most realistic kind of problems being solved. And you should, as I already told you, if you make some patashishas for 4 or 5 students in every module, all these topics like arrays, hash table, binary tree, graphs, heaps, linked list, search, queue, strings, all those things you can really enjoy with the students, because your own students are there in the class, 3-4 members, and apart from that actually you will also be there. Ensure that actually you will be enjoying each of the modules. And in specifically with respect to data structures, I suggest you to go for a connected repetition. It means actually try to give problems which are connected from arrays to queues. Similarly, from binary search arrays, binary search can happen in an array. If by chance if the data is stored in array, can I just do a binary search if the data is stored in? So therefore, we will try to get confidence on arrays and also on a binary search. Always try to give 2 data structure being linked. So therefore, you will try to link that data structure with this particular data structure, and you will try to understand. So therefore, this is possible only when you modularize the program that you are developing. I suggest you to go for a connected repetition. And I already told you, try to use reusable codes. Reusable codes means for each of the modules, try to have a reusable. So therefore, you should be able to, say for example, binary search, you would like to implement by using arrays, or can a stack be implemented by using arrays? So he is having a module exclusively for it. So therefore, he will try to connect this. Okay. And I request all the computer science teachers who are teaching data structure, don't try to read problems from the textbooks, because once you are familiarized, give problems instantaneously in the classroom, whatever the problem that comes to your mind. Don't try to bring, if say for example, I'm trying to write some names for the stacks. Don't bring up from the textbook. Try to take from the students who are sitting in the class. Maybe you can take cricket players who are live in the current Indian cricket match, or you can even consider from England cricket match. Try to take the names or whatever which are there in the class. You would like to add up some items in the which are available in the class. You take table, you take chair, you take items which are visible in front of the students. So I request all of you to give problems instantaneously in the classroom, not only examples, even the problems should be given instantaneously, which is possible, especially with the data structure. And try to give only realistic examples. Don't try to give examples which are there in the textbook, which they will try to link their data structure with respect to whatever they have already studied. Say, for example, linked list. When you are telling linked list, tell them actually when you are opening so many images one after the other in your thing, especially in the web browsing, you will be going one by one. There's a back arrow button. So how does it happen? So like that, try to give them the most realistic example. In my college, actually, recently I have given a lecture for Fibonacci series. One hour I have just given only on Fibonacci series. What are the realistic examples which are there? So like that, there are plenty of realistic examples that you can see. Say, for example, web pages, music players, like this. Even for the graphs, you can give a lot of examples, especially with the GPS navigation system. When you are saying trees, plenty of examples. I can just show it to you here. Say, for example, you are writing one HTML document. Even HTML document, we have head, body, something like that. We have. These are the realistic examples. People will be quickly understanding. Say, you can even give the example of a network, right? So the which will actually trying to this fellow trying to connect this subject with the network. So therefore, computer networks we will be studying in the next semester. Is trying to connect with respect to the trees that he is studying in the lower semester. And similarly, for example, autocorrector, how does the autocorrector works, which is basically with respect to a tree. So for example, I would like to look example of a tree, something like that. This is about teaching learning. And only one point I would like to add up, especially with respect to evaluation, which you need to do it, and especially in the national education policy which is coming up, wherein which you are supposed to do a lot of experimentation in the class. I suggest all of you to use higher semester students for doing valuation. Say, for example, for data structure, you can use 7th semester student. There are some partition do the valuation for you. One way actually you are helping, you are giving directions to those 7th semester students to understand data structure again when they are going for placement. Trust on students. You need to trust on students. They will not cheat you as long as you trust them actually. You moderate. Say, we know that when we do valuation, we also do moderation. You randomly pick one or two and the valuations, and you tell this boy, what valuation you have done is something wrong. Please, you give responsibility to 7th semester students, so certainly they will just do it, and it will help you also and them also to recall data structure all subjects. Encourage students to be unbiased. So you feel that actually you may be doing little more marks to his own students because you are doing moderation and you are bringing confidence to your own students. So therefore, this is how you should start practicing. Since I have taken more time, actually I have something to touch upon algorithms. I'll just take up those things in the subsequent when the time is given to me. I'll just stop at this moment. I'll hand it over back to Madam. If there are anything that which are there with respect to data structure and the algorithms and all which I am practicing, let us take it forward. Let's give chance to others. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, sir. I think it was an interesting presentation where we understand that we should go with the progressive learning which is required for data structures. So basically, we are trying to involve the students so that the students, when they frame the questions, they will really go searching for the right answer to test the teacher, at least whether the teacher is telling us the right answers for the questions what we are asking. So it is a mutual learning concept which should be introduced in the classroom to keep every student more concentrating to it, and also getting involved them will really trigger them to find out the things in a better way. And when they show interest, it is sure that they will get it up, because data structures and algorithms are not the subject which should be taught as a concept. It should be taught where it triggers the logical thinking of the students. It is really well presented, sir. Thank you, sir. And we have next Dr. Satish Kumar. Sir would be talking on more on computer organization, which is the core of again computer science, where basics, that is the basic step where a student would understand from where the basic computer started coming up. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, madam. So, my screen is visible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, I'm directly starting my presentation. So topic is teaching, learning and assessment. And I will discuss about computer organization and architecture, which is taken by me here at IIIT Allahabad. So basically, whatever I'm going to present is related to my teaching learning style here at IIIT Allahabad. So probably every teacher is having their own style of teaching, learning and assessment. Obviously, all the assessment which we are adopting is under new CCLCS system. So that will be related to that only. So here I'm taking the course on computer organization architecture, and this is offered for the second semester UG IT students. And before taking this course, the students are having very basic knowledge of electronics. This is a 4-credit course here. LTP structure is 211 and contact hours are 222. So sufficient contact hours are assigned for tutorial as well as practicals. So average size of batch and section is 300 and 100. So the total students are 300, and these are divided in 3 batches. 3 faculty members are associated for teaching this course, and 8 TAs. These TAs are at MTech level for per section. It means for every 100 students, 8 TAs are working as assistants. So the whole philosophy of teaching computer organization and architecture is, what to learn, why to learn. These are the basic questions, which should be answered. So what to learn, why to learn, how much to learn, how to learn, what are the learning goals and how to assess the learning goals. So basically, entire semester revolves around these questions. Actually. So here, while going through the course, I just want to highlight, means we should be very clear about the learning objective, course content, learning process, learning assessment, learning outcome, and student grading. Means all these things are connected to each other. And while deciding the learning objective, it should be clear, fixed, and measurable. Until these are measurable, we should not include those objectives. Course content should support the learning objectives and should be very clear. Means there should be a coherence between course content and objectives. Learning process should be iterative. Means in this course of computer organization architecture, it is quite iterative with feedbacking mechanism. Means for every component, some sort of iteration is adopted, and proper feedback are being provided to the students so that they can modify themselves, they can improve themselves. And learning assessment, basically we adopt this formative and summative with sufficient objectivity and subjectivity. So both type of assessments are adopted for this particular course. Learning objectives, outcomes, so compared against the predefined expected threshold. Actually, this threshold is very much required. Means at the end of the course, you should be, everybody should be able to assess whether, whatever was said, whether our students could get that level or not. And on the basis of this threshold, we used to grade the students. So here, we follow the relative with absolute normalized with outlier filtering. This approach is being adopted in case of computer organization. So these are some simple objectives for this COA. So students should have the high level understanding of role of assembler, instruction sets and hardware. The student should be able to use the instruction set architecture effectively by assembly language programming, should be able to understand the various arithmetic soft and hard processes. Soft and hard processes for addition, subtraction, multiplication and division for integers as well as floating point numbers. Should be able to design various hardware components like arithmetic, and logic circuits along with the rules and design of mux, demux, encoder, decoder, shift registers, and counters. The student should understand memory organization, hierarchy, and design principle, and interfacing various devices via I/O interface and associated data transfer. The student should understand the performance criteria, benchmarking, optimization, and its role in efficient design and use of processor. At last, the student should be able to design an ALU with bare minimum instruction set architecture and propose its organization and entire system. So ultimately, the course objective should be how to use the system effectively if you're the user, or how to design the system effectively if you are the designer. So both aspects are covered in this course. And this is typical course outline. So micro details are available with the syllabus. So overview of computer organization, architecture, data representation, and instruction set architecture, computer arithmetic, memory organization, I/O organization, computer performance assessment, and enhancement. We used to give sufficient stress upon this last outline, that is computer performance and assessment, because this provides sufficient motivation among the students to study this course and further to link with other subjects as well as. So we follow this Hennessy Patterson, as a textbook, that is computer organization and design, and the hardware software interface. So this is a very good book that we follow. And for programming, actually there are two parts. One is using the system, and second one is designing the system. For using, actually we follow this MIF programmer, that is Mars, and for digital designing we use the Logisync. So both sort of practices are done by the students, and these are very light-weighted simulators and can be downloaded by the students on their own machines. That's why this is very, very flexible. So I start this typical classroom lecturing philosophy actually. So here, lecture time is typically 60 minutes for one lecture, and these are basic assumptions that students are of diverse in terms of region, caste, gender, family background, intellectual capabilities, and other factors. And all the students are having the smartphones and Wi-Fi connectivity. If it is not Wi-Fi connectivity, then obviously there is some data pack and internet connectivity. These are the basic assumptions. And here, I'm taking this curve from IEEE Education Society Board actually. So this is typical lecture time attention curve. Basically, what we can observe here as time moves from 0 to 10, 20, up to 60 minutes. And if we observe this y-axis, then how the attention level of the entire class varies. So initially what happens, some of the students are present in the class when teacher enters. Okay, so that may be, this number may be 60%. Only 60% the students are attentive. Then teacher enters, some more students used to come, and after 10 minutes, the complete class is settled and the attention level is maximum at the beginning of the class. Then teacher starts teaching, and suddenly, gradually we can see that this attention level decreases with respect to time. And there is a peculiar thing, between 0 and 50, this attention level can never reach up to 100%. But what is the peculiarity of the system? If we consider this last 10 minutes, then what happens? This attention level increases very rapidly, and it can increase up to the level of 100%. So what is, basic objective of the typical classroom lecturing is how to improve this time attention curve. How to improve so that the area under curve should be maximum as possible. So every teacher should try to maximize the area under this curve. So here, these are some insights, closer look. For example, here, if we consider this point, then the start of the class, which is partially settled actually, because some of the students are already present, and after entering the teachers, some of the students normally, there are few students which are slightly delayed, and we allow them to enter the class. And here, teacher started and students are paying attention, and this is the maximum level of attention by the students. And this is the level, great happiness being exploited for the learning. Actually here, what we can observe that attention level is maximum because the students are very happy that the class is going to end. And naturally, in their minds, there is a great happiness. So every teacher should exploit this point also, in my opinion. So how to improve the time attention curve for effective learning? So what happens here, making lecture modular with 15 minutes time. It means it is not required. I mean, normally I adopt this thing that I don't stretch a particular topic for the entire duration. Means entire lecture is divided into some smaller modules, maybe of 15, roughly of 15 minutes. So normally 3 modules will be covered in this 60-minute time. Okay. So this practice is being adopted, and pop-up questions, few multiple choice questions and discussions on the recent topics, physical movement by the instructor to better connect with the students. So these practices are being adopted, addressing the students by their names as much as possible for better connect and feel good factor, appreciating the student on each and every, even smallest response and positive feedbacking. Means whatever we are discussing, we should be very positive and we should motivate the students for the better connecting with the class. Eye contact maximization to gauge them, to have the feel about the learning process with the sense of identifying the distracted students. So there are 2 benefits. Means if I'm delivering, then I can get a sense whether the students are getting something out of it or not. At the same time, I can observe the distractors, I mean all those distracted students, and I can deal with those students at some later stage of time. So avoiding the self-distraction by the distracted students activities until the topic delivery is over. After that, the gazing activity in the form of direct discussion with those distractors convey a clear message without using any negative words. Means I have already identified the distractors, and then I can initiate the discussion, academic discussion with those distractors. So identify such students and try to discuss with them as much as possible offline, not to humiliate, but to motivate them. And the most probable outcome is the improved student and learning process. So what to do between 16th and 20th minute? If I have divided the module of 15 minutes each, so there are basically three modules, and I'm left with some 15-minute time. So 5 minutes matters a lot actually. Do some gauging by pop-up questions and on the recent topic, discussion and distraction busting. So I mean, you just simply identify those students, and basically those students are less interested. Then try to develop some interest in them. So this way, I mean, we can utilize. I mean, if the students are distracted, definitely we can motivate them. Outcome of 5-minute activity. What is the purpose of this 5-minute activity? Students will be prepared prior to start of 16th minute. It means they know very well that after the end of the topic, the teacher will start discussing with the students. If I'm not paying the attention to the class, if I'm discussing something, then I may be caught. Okay, so will be little more attentive to face the encounter. Actually, prior they will prepare. Some will hope for discussion, some for appreciation, some for motivation. The students will be ready for learning, evaluation, and assessment. If there are some pop-up questions and randomly I discuss with some students, so obviously the students have to pay the attention whatever I have already discussed between the 1st and 15th minute. And similarly, between 36th to 40th minute, again 5 minutes matters a lot. Do some gauging by few multiple choice questions on the current topic covered recently to be circulated to the mobiles of all the students, because we cannot say the students, we cannot tell the students, please don't use those mobiles nowadays. So how to exploit, how to use this, in a constructive way. So this is a simple suggestion, few multiple choice questions on the current topics covered recently to be circulated to the mobiles of all the students and collect the performance. The same to be used for final assessment. So this may be included as a part of continuous assessment. And we can, assess the students whether those students are interested in these particular topics or not. Moreover, we can get a feel if the performance is wonderful against this 15-minute time, then we can say, okay, delivery was good, otherwise we had to relook. And what are the outcomes of this 5-minute activity? The students will be prepared prior to this. The start of 36 minutes will be little more attentive to face the encounter, students will be ready for the learning, evaluation, and assessment. What to do between 56th to 60th minute? Last minute hope matters a lot because students will be very happy that class is going to be ended and we will be free. And I mean, this way, I mean, how we can exploit, how effectively we can use their happiness in a constructive way. So students are already motivated and contented, great level of happiness. So this happiness started few minutes back, probably at the beginning of 51st minutes. So outcome of the last minute hope, the students will be prepared prior to the start of 56th minute. The student will be ready for better learning actually. So this last 10 minutes is very, very important. And we should not leave this last 10 minutes very loosely actually. So what is the objective? This was a typical time attention curve. And by doing those activities, we can achieve this kind of variation in this time attention curve and ultimately back. So attendance collection shall be managed by TAs, lectures by the faculty member for pop-up or multiple choice questions prepared by the faculty and TAs and floating by TAs actually. So whenever you, I mean, obviously there must be some TAs with you in the class, you simply give some signal and those questions will be floated on their respective emails and the students can respond within 2-3 minutes. And ultimate objective is to increase the area under this curve. And definitely this will work. Similarly, the tutorial philosophy, typical tutorial of 120 minutes, basically 2 hours. So 2 TAs per 25 students are assigned roughly here, ensuring the continuous learning and partial component of continuous assessment. So tutorial assignments and assessment basically. So there are 4 parts of my tutorial. So part A, that is review questions from previous lectures and tutorial. And this ensures the continuous guided self-learning and understanding actually. So obviously this tutorial design should be very proper and every component should have certain objective. And part B, these are the practice problems on the basis of just previous lecture. Problems are presented to the students and provided some time to think and discuss among the peers. This ensures the collaborative learning. At last, the same questions are solved by TAs to help those who are not able to understand the concept. In some problems, only hints are sufficient. It is not required to solve the problem completely, only hints may work. It generates the deeper understanding, the subject and concept, provides the students a forum of controlled discussion and doubt clearing. It means, I mean, you provide some space to the students so that they can form the group and they can discuss to solve those certain questions. And then part C, this part contains the unsolved problems, not evaluated only for the self-practice, means not evaluated only for the self-practice. On the basis of just previous lecture and part B, only hints are provided for those questions. Students are expected to solve these questions themselves with the help of text, web, or collaborations. Potential type to ask in the review test. Basically, I mean, since these questions are done, I mean, solved by the students themselves, I mean, self-learning is involved. So these type of questions may be a potential question for the review test also. It generates the habit of self-doing and learning, deeper understanding the subject and concept. It is a part of assessment. Means basically we concentrate on this part. And the part D, open book problems. On the basis of just previous lecture and part B, whatever have been covered in the lectures and tutorial, some complex design and analytical problems are floated and new propositional problems, I mean, a kind of problem actually. The students are expected to solve these questions themselves with the help of class notes, book, text, web, peer collaborations, and discussion with neighbors. Neighbors means all neighboring students who are sitting in the class. Ensures the group activity and collaborative learning, guided self-learning. Ensures the improved analytical capabilities. It is also the part of assessment. So basically this entire tutorial is assessed in this way, basically for my course. So 0.3 times of R ensures retention, and 0.2 times of S ensures attention. This is part A, this is part B, this is part C, and this is part D. So part B ensures the attention, part C ensures competence and problem solving, and part D ensures analytical and cognitive capabilities. So this way, entire tutorial is planned. Actually, tutorial is the best venue to learn maximum. And similarly, we adopt the laboratory practices. We adopted practice rather than practical here. We don't call practicals or labs. We simply call all those sessions as practice sessions. So 4 TAs per 25 students, roughly, with batches SA, SB, SC, and SD. It means entire batch of 100 students is divided into some smaller batches of 25 only, ensuring the continuous learning and partial component of continuous assessment. First lot is for general introduction. Whenever there is first encounter and know-how of the simulator, their installation and functioning with the help of solve problems, means obviously we give some examples how to use those simulators, etc. Simulators are being installed on labs as well as personal machines by the students. It is assumed that the students are now well aware of the tools to be used. Means after this first interaction, we assume that now these students can exploit those tools and techniques very effectively. Then practice assignment is being floated and uploaded to the web. This assignment shall be solved by the students with their personal machines at any convenient time suitable to them. Next week, batch SA will come. Means now batch-wise discussion starts, and next week batch SA will be assessed on the basis of practice problems on similar difficulty level as floated via previous assignments. The current practice set will be uploaded to web and will serve as the next assignment for the other batches. It means for batch D, when batch D will come first time, the second time for this assessment, they have to solve at least 3 assignments. Okay. So as this, weeks progresses, then the assignment load is increasing. But certainly, we are not calling all those batches together in the labs. Means those batches are having the freedom to learn themselves. Okay, so we are not killing any time, but at the same time, we are forcing them to learn. And 3 lab assessments are compulsory for each and every sub-batch in entire duration of the study. So 3 lab assistants are compulsory. So teaching learning is what are the scoring criteria in laboratory? Basically 0.2 times of A, then 0.4 times of RP, and 0.4 times of V. And this again, basically, this first part ensured regularity and punctuality, because this A is the attendance. Means if any student is very regular and attending all the labs, basically 3 assessments are done. So all the 3 assessments are attended by the students. So we obviously provide some weight to them, ensures regularity and punctuality. And this second part ensures coding, design, and problem solving. And the third part ensures analytical and cognitive skills among the students. So this is the entire philosophy of lecturing, tutorial, and laboratory, which is being adopted here in the course of computer organization and architecture by me. And then review. So here, basically, many component reviews are there. So component review test. So C1 review test is there. So this covers first 2 out of 4 modules of the entire syllabus. So basically, entire syllabus is divided into 4 modules. So C1 review test, and then after C1, we will have the C2 review test. This review test is typically of 60 minutes, and this is a part of formative assessment process, actually. And in this, typically we adopt that multiple choice questions or interaction and feedbacking. Basically, we adopt these practices just to prepare the students for better learning. And this is kind of self-guided assessment. C2 review test covers last 2 out of 4 modules of the entire syllabus. Again, it is typically of 60 minutes. And this is again part of formative assessment. Multiple choice questions may be asked, interactions and YOC and feedbacking may also be adopted. And again, this is self-guided assessment. Means the students are getting the feedback out of it and they can know whether they are learning or not. At the same time, being teacher, we can assess that further we have to give more more stress on which particular topic. So C1 score contains this LS, TS, and PS. This is the lecture. I mean, those pop-up questions are multiple choice questions during the lecture. This is a tutorial. This is a practical, and this is the what do you call the fourth component? Reviews, basically reviews. So here we have given only 20% weightage to the review test, basically C1 review test and C2 review test. So most of the weightage is assigned on this continuous process of the assessment, whether it is in lecture or tutorial or practicals. If the score of C1 and C2 is less than 24, why 24? Because total assessment, I mean, will be done in this 60 marks. C1, C2 is of 60% only. So total 40% out of this 60 marks should be attained by the students. Then only he will be allowed. Otherwise, he will be treated as a drop students. And final score, if he is clearing this, I mean, he's not the drop students. I mean, if it is dropped student, then obviously there is a requirement to relearn. So those students have to appear for the summer semesters, or again they have to register and they have to repeat the entire process. And total score is 0.3 times of C1, 0.3 times of C2, and 0.4 times of C3. So here we can see that a lot of portion of our assessment is on formative assessment. I mean, this is basically the formative assessment, some very less summative assessment. But the purpose of summative assessment is also clear, that a student should be able to analyze, a student should be able to, I mean, apply those concepts, a student should be able to develop those things. So that's why summative assessment is also required, but the weightage is not too much. Here, feedbacking mechanism, instructor initiated, course feedback by students, instructor feedback by students, and TA's feedback by students. So students can give the feedback for the course, for the instructor, and for the TAs. And every feedback is having its purpose. So course feedback by students, helpful to improve and update for next time. Instructor feedback by students, self-improvement. TA's feedback by students, better future training and guiding to those TAs. And question feedback by response analysis, trust areas to work, potential question for the next year. So this is all about the teaching and learning practices which is being adopted here at IIIT Allahabad for the course of computer vision and computer organization and architecture. So thank you very much for providing me this opportunity to present this teaching learning processes here at IIIT Allahabad. Thanks to the audience.
Thank you, sir. Actually, this was a detailed presentation, like if a course teacher would take a course, how exactly the teacher would plan for taking up the classes and how exactly the evaluation process should be conducted. And it is a very transparent process. The students should know prior in hand what exactly is being evaluated also. Thank you very much, sir. And I think we are very sure, which if you could see the panel experts amalgamation. One, Dr. Murali sir, he is the management side and also a teacher. Dr. Kulkarni sir, he is the principal and also the head of the department. And we have Dr. Satish sir, who is from IIIT. So one is from the private university, affiliated institution, and IITs, where we can see that, like what exactly. But what we see is that end of the day, what is the teaching learning process and the evaluation that is getting involved into bringing good engineers for tomorrow's society. So with this, we have some been posted by our teachers. No few things. I request other participants to kindly mute. So for owing with the maths and CS and I in pandemic situation where we are conducting online classes, some of the maths teachers are asking what are the tools or the aids that are available to conduct online math classes. So I think Kulkarni sir could support us with this.
Yeah, thank you, madam. But before that, may I request Dr. Satish Singh to please stop? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So supporting maths is a wonderful question, but only thing, let me be putting across my thoughts. Maths is something which is understood properly at a subtler level. Okay. So to bring this subtler level into a cognition kind of a thing, I believe computer science is the only thing which can support it. So all these days, I have been a proponent of saying, okay, CS means what? They don't want maths. EC means what? Only maths. But of late, I have seen that you don't have something to hate or you don't have something to accept. Okay, they complement each other. So probably we teachers have a big role to take this forward and then make the thought process set in amongst the teachers. What Dr. Satish Singh has rightly said, the learning curve, the duration in 60 minutes. So probably we need to take a lot of learning from visualization aspects. Right? So teaching maths is always interesting. I told you only one example, how to visualize a plus b whole square. Like that, there are so many things. Pythagoras theorem is also there, where you can put 3 squares on the 3 sides of the triangle and show that it matches. Okay, so this particular session, I would clearly say that it is maths not dominating on computer science not dominating on mathematics side, but both are going hand in hand. And yes, this is the day, this is an era where lot of special effects and lot of computer science contributions have been happening. Definitely we can give much cognition aspect to this abstract or subtler world of mathematics. I can say that. But it's a role of teachers to take this forward in a sensitive way. And yes, because it is online and everything, and teaching maths has become very difficult thing. Whenever you open a maths lecture from US or something on Coursera, you find board full of equations only. So cognizing it into a very fantastic way, making it amenable at intellectual memory, and then what are other levels we say, yes, it is the requirement of computer science, I can say. I can only say that because depth of computer science, we have two beautiful panelists here, Sri Murli and Dr. Satish. Equally is Dr. Sahana also. Madam, that's my version. Yeah. Thank you.
And I think Murli sir can support us telling that even when we program, it is again a maths that is being implemented. It's an applied mathematics that we implement it in a programming. So I think Murli sir can support us like how exactly, because all problems, though we say verbally, it has a logic. End of the day, when we get into programming, and I think all again have a misconception that programming is not knowing about a programming language. Programming is actually a skill. It is independent of any computer or a programming languages that we might be knowing. So this should be very clear to all of us as computer science or IS graduates, like we should develop such skills. So I think Murli sir can support us like how exactly that we take in maths also into programming or logical thinking.
Okay, so exactly with the mathematics perspective, I'm not able to say because I'm not taught specifically with the mathematics kind of thing actually. But whereas with respect to algorithms and data structures, I suggest actually to use less of computers actually. Less of computers. See, algorithms and data structures, what all we teach, they are just like blueprints in the buildings. You need to draw it. And to draw this, you need to have a knowledge of all these things. Say an architect will be knowing about how to draw it. It means actually even most of the time we experimented that actually program should be done only in the last 15 minutes in the laboratory. If we consider 3 hours laboratory, for example, to do an experiment, we insist that actually 2.5 hours they should work only on the papers. Paper in the sense actually you'll be working on the mind. You'll be working on the mind whether this program can be successfully executed or not. So therefore, when he is working with a pen and paper, it means with the mind. So certainly lot of logic reasoning will come actually. Either it could be mathematics or anything actually. The reasoning starts coming only when you apply your mind. And the programming, anybody can just do it actually. As I already told you, you can just pick up, you can look at a lot of tools which are available, a lot of books are available, they give you the code. So therefore coding is not thing actually, you need to give emphasis on reasoning. So therefore the reasoning is more important, and we should inculcate an habit of making students to start thinking, making them to work on papers rather than computers.
And actually, there was a question like one of the teacher wants to know, like looking out at the data, basically, do we think that you have to design the use of which data structure should be used, which is the best algorithm? So is it that the data which really matters for taking up the choosing the data structures and the algorithm that we have to implement for a better output?
No, it is not that actually. It is a case dependent. No specific kind of thing actually. But you should ensure that actually the data that you are trying to use. Say for example, for the GPS system, the input is actually you are just giving the source and destination. Source and destination are the two inputs that you are giving. But you should also tell them that the data is not only those two. It is actually a lot of maps which are there as a database, and there are a lot of things which are lively. Say for example, if you look at the map, there will be some live red thing will come. Actually, it is only because a lot of people are using it. So therefore, input is not only that you are giving. Input is also supported by the database. It is also taken from some other kind of thing actually, which is already been stored by you or somebody else. So maybe for example, for writing a program like a header file that you are using, like that. So data, it is not that you are just directly giving us an input. It is also supportive database that will be being taken. But the kind of data I suggested in my slide, that actually try to take data which is most realistic, which is live in the class. So therefore it attracts the students. Yeah, I am involved in this actually. My name is involved. Virat Kohli name is involved. So therefore try to give them like that. So this is what I suggested.
And also, some of them ask, like, do you think that the projects are the best way in which the students can learn data structure?
Madam, can you just repeat?
Do we think that project-based learning, is that the best way that the student can develop a good programming skill so that they know the appropriate data structures to be used?
Okay, no, I have been specifically telling from the beginning actually, don't mix up data structure with the programming. The programming is nothing to do with a learning data structure. So data structure is actually telling them how to store the database and retrieve it whenever you want it. You can use any kind of programming, or you can learn even without programming also. Actually, programming is not at all be required to learn database, data structure, algorithms, all this kind of thing. Actually, programs are not at all be required. They need to apply the reasoning and logic behind that actually. So therefore, absolutely programming, let us not mix up actually. Say for example, if you ask me actually, I do not know much of the higher level programming, but I know only C programming. That is more than sufficient for me to teach C data structure. So therefore, don't mix up data structure with program at all. It is nothing to do with that.
So how do you think that we could evaluate the logical thinking capability of the students?
The logical, this is what actually you should start encouraging students to write on a different way actually. You should encourage, you write only problems on the board and ask each one of them to solve by yourself. Just give you a small example. In my class, I asked to write one matrix in the class by Ramanujan's date of birth actually. I asked, what is the logic behind this? Ramanujan's date of birth he has written with a 4x4 matrix. You will not believe one student just wrote this within 10 minutes actually. We should allow people to start practicing and highlight that voice. So this is what you have done it. Please explain how you have done it. So therefore, make students to participate in learning. So therefore, if they feel that actually my peer is now be there as a participative in learning, so certainly people get enjoy in that class, and it will be more interactive rather than conventionally teach the algorithm. You write this on the board. This is how the stack goes. This is how the overflow goes. Rather than allow students to participate in the class. So therefore, they feel that actually they are the part of learning with others. They are also part of making others to learn, right? Something like that actually.
Satish said, as we understand that we know that we have, as we saw that the attention curve of the students. So one of the faculty has asked how to make students convert their memory learning to associate learning.
Actually, this is very good question. Normally, what happens if there is a approach of care or don't care. If we don't care about the learning, then obviously it will be memory-based learning. So certainly we have to connect all those students for entire duration of the lecture time, not only during the lecture hours, but also offline also we should be very much connected with those students. And first of all, we have to connect with the students, then only any concept will be associated with those students. If the students don't feel that those are special for the teacher, then certainly there is a lacking in terms of learning. So that's why it is required to be connected more and more. Every student should be given sufficient privilege, you can say. So those students should feel very special for teachers, for TAs. Then only you can motivate for better learning. And we should address each and every, even smallest query. And even if those students are not raising any query, we should motivate them so that those students should discuss. And this is very practical. If we are more connected, we are more open for the discussion, then learning is not memory-based learning. I believe so.
Madam, let me add one dimension to this.
Yeah.
Your question was very interesting. From moving from memory to associative learning, let me give a spiritual dimension to this. Okay, so there are 3 faculties which are existing in us. They're actually believed to be having 7 faculty, but out of that 7, 3 are very important. There is mind, there is intellect, and memory. These 3 are the one which create all the problem. So they are truly disconnected. Actually, the bigger role for teacher is to make these 3 connected. Murali sir said, giving some ideas and a thing. It's the mind that sparks the idea, right? And intellect is the one which helps to bring this into practice. Memory is the one, yes, foundations are required. We have to pull from some dictionary and pull it on and connect them together. So all these 3 connections have to be established in a beautiful way. The bigger role for us is not to talk about memory-based learning to associative learning. Let us use a different dimension, mind, intellect, and memory association. Can we not address this? Yes, it's possible. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that.
Actually, there is one more very interesting question. As I see, most of the questionnaires were how to teach this concept, how to take up that, how to make students attentive online. But this is a very good question asked by a teacher who says, how do I really recognize the progress of my teaching? Right? So how do I really learn, like as a teacher? So what can I do? So this is the best question. I felt like, yes, as a teacher, we should know that whether what is our improvement on the teaching skills. It is a self-assessment, actually.
How many people are standing in front of your room after the class is a simple indication that actually you are, I'm not saying actually it's an exact number. It's a way in which actually you should see that even after the class, it's not only for asking questions. It is not only asking the questions of the subject. Somebody will just follow you even to talk to actually say that actually your dress is good, your presentation was good. Sir, today you spoke very well. So like that, even to just comment on that, actually, if some people are just following you even after the class till you reach your home, till you reach your room. So probably that's a good sign that actually you are really with the students.
That's a visible side. That's a visible. Invisible side is yes, there are 60 students reflecting their faces.
Okay. In the door, in the door when we exit out of the class and you go to the right side and most of the students go to the left side. So that is a small indicator. It's a test that actually, of course, you have done well. It's not that you have not done well. You have done the duty, but you have not really touched to the expectations of them. Actually, you have not really made them join. So you have to see, if you really look at our Professor Nagbhushan's class, after class actually there used to be a big queue, 2 hours class, 1 hour discussion in the professor's chamber. So that's an indication that actually some people just wanted to see if one boy is going, actually other boy is also joining just to see that what this boy is asking actually. So that culture we need to start developing, saying that actually yes. So this is a small test that actually how we have reached the students.
So actually one more question is that really will the flip learning or the blended learning, right? Will that motivate the students? So because it is again, the students are of different characters. Some of them they could be very open. Some of them are very shy and they cannot really talk in the classroom. But they are very good when it is a one-to-one conversation. But in a big crowd, they may not be good.
Now, for this only, I just mentioned, let us have a round robin system. Let us follow this by everybody in this university, that let us follow round robin. It hardly takes 5 minutes for me to ask roll number 1, please get up and ask any question related to data structure, any question related to algorithms, anything. You please ask one question. And you should make everybody to participate in this actually. Then if this culture, being developed, then everybody will become at least one or the other. See, you should tell them actually, if you are not talkative, you cannot survive. Even becoming an engineer and you are not able to speak with anybody, then what sort of engineering that you are doing? So therefore, obviously, you should, teach them many things of this kind.
Yes. Satish, so there is one more thing, because it is on the hardware core subjects. Basically, I think this is always true. When students go for logic design, electronic subjects, they are very in the laboratory, basically. They just really figure out just changing the connection, knowing that whether the microcontroller will work or this will work, they just find out. So which is the best practice where it can make the students interesting even in the hardware laboratories?
Actually, earlier I was taking a class on microprocessors, so I can share that experience. So in that course, I adopted a practice. For example, I have given certain problems, maybe simple arrangement of various numbers in ascending or descending order. So problem may be very simple, and students are able to solve that problem. But my question was not to solve the problem. My question was simple, that you have to use minimum bytes for the program, first thing, and how quickly it can be, it can run, basically. If we set those kind of objectives, so what happened? So I used to go to some different campus of IIIT, earlier it was there. So I floated these kind of problems, and I told the students, okay, you have to write the code using minimum bytes, and your program should be very, very fast. It should be fastest. Means you have to select the instructions from the available instruction set, which is the fastest. So this way, what happened? One group solved the problem, and after some time, again the same group came, okay, and that group these many bytes again. Even in this 3-hour practical at that time, 3 times that group came and they told, okay, we have optimized this, this is optimized. At last we could get the most optimized code. So this way, this is the best practice. Set the objectives in this way so that the ultimate goal should be met. And moreover, we have compared with the students. If one group has come and reported that we have achieved these many bytes, then we announce among the students, now this is your benchmark. And suddenly the benchmark was increasing and every student was busy in doing this. So this way we conducted the microprocessor lab, actually. So this is not simply plug and play kind of thing.
Yeah, it is very good, sir. This will really, actually, we have a message from Director Teacher Ramurthy from BNMIT. He says, a good teacher is the one who makes the students of least interest to attend the class with full interest. So he also says that with his 50 years of experience, he agrees with what Dr. Murali also told about it. And even Satish sir also comments on it, saying that when one group starts repeatedly coming up with good output or whatever they have achieved on, the other students also should get motivated. Yes, I think we can learn from them. Actually, the peer learning is actually the way that the students get motivated more than a dictator teacher standing in a classroom and telling all the concepts, right? So we have to get into their age of understanding and make them understand, like, okay, this is what is that you have to mold yourself. Self-learning is the component which is very much required to be inculcated within the students. I think it was a real good discussion, and we were really striving hard to learn the Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Modi, sir.
Okay. See, it is only an out of a kind of refreshing kind of answer. Say, for example, even after 15 years of teaching, let us say, in my case, it is already 30 years. Even if I don't do teaching better, what else I can do? I don't understand. See, I cannot go to companies and all. I've been asked to become a teacher. Even after 10 years of teaching, 15 years of teaching, 20 years of teaching, if I don't do better and better, I am unfit to be in this profession. And of course, I am unfit there also because nobody takes me there. So therefore, so we should become good teachers. I think Professor Nagbhushan wanted to say something. Sir, please.
Yeah, it was very wonderful discussion. I was just cursing myself. Why was I student so many years back? I wish I could have been student now, and all of you could have been my teachers. I would have really loved to be the student now. It's so interesting. So what Dr.
We are truly blessed by your appreciation, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. And what Dr. Satish Singh stressed is one point, that all institutions, particularly private institutions, should go out of the way to think of having a fleet of TAs supporting a teacher. TAs stand for teaching assistants. That is what has got to be done. See, private institutions should not mean that they are private and they should minimize the number of people working in the campus. They have got to really make it interactive. I also like Dr. Murli's concept of putting the senior students to evaluate. That is what you make them TAs. You make the senior students TAs. You make the MTech students TAs. You make your PhD scholars TAs. They will really put them into. That is where the contact, what Dr. Satish was trying to tell, the personal contact will just get established. That is why in fact, one more technical reason. See. Dr. Murli or Dr. Subhash Kulkarni, you look at them, they are all with all bald head, and definitely no student will come to them to keep talking. However, TA's age is very young and TAs are very contactable, and TAs would be reporting to you, and you have the twin advantage of training the TAs as future teachers, plus the TAs contact with the youngsters will definitely establish a big rapport. That is what is happening. And you have got to also see the stress should be more towards, like you mentioned, that reduce the classroom teaching, 4 hours of teaching. Increasing the tutorials and participation is more important. So a student should learn, not lecture, learn listening. L for listening. T for not tutorial. He should do the transactions. T stands for transactions. And P stands not for practicals, not for practice, but for active participation. So L for listening comprehension, T for transaction comprehension, and P for participation comprehension. And all those components, as Dr. Satish has come up with his own model, to put all of them together to evaluate the entire score is more important. And I'm very happy, I'm very much convinced that future is very safe in the youngsters' hand like you. I wish I could have been the student again. I wish I can start a BTech program now in information science and really understand what really is information technology and information science. Dr. Sahana Gowda's questions, the sequence in which you have sequenced the questions, the way in which you have taken the questions from lighter end to a very difficult end and towards the philosophical end is really wonderful. I mean, it was a very great session to enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Sir. And also, Professor Srinivas Ji has said that students' engagement in class and teachers' response to engagement is a factor to gauge the interest. So I think that is really true. It means to say that both of us are active in the classroom.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Let me add one
Yes,
observation here through the discussion.
Yes,
to all the discussions, one thought has come to me. I think it is time for us to move from giving a question and then asking an answer from other side. I think we need to move from that to, we should give question and answer also to the person and ask them to find a new dimension to it. That
Yes, sir.
should make a big transition, because as Dr. Satish Singh said, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times optimizing the code. That thought, I said, okay, it's wonderful. You give the question, you give the answer also, and tell them, yeah, you have to find another dimension to it. That
Yes.
will reinforce the learning, reinforce the thought process, I believe. And one more last closing one I need to say here. Recently, I was attending to Arnab Goswami's session. He was asked a question: what are the 10 learning points you want to pass it on? He was addressing an inaugural session at one of the institutes. He said, first one is one need to conquer the fear. The student need to conquer the fear in themselves. That's a wonderful statement what he gave, and it makes a lot of sense, because students, are they coming out of fear to us? Are they coming out of learning to us? We don't know. But first thing, if we put that fear into place, everything will happen. Okay. So thank you, madam, for giving this opportunity.
Yes, sir. Actually, the fear is that it is not that the fear that they're scared of a teacher or something. It is the fear whether the person who's coming is right for himself. It
Correct.
should not be the fear what he's seeing from the other side. It should be the fear whether I'm going in the right direction to what I want for. So if that gets inculcated, and I think students today, they've come from very good schools and everything, they know how to approach, they have a better skills to do it. Only thing what they need is a very good platform, or if we should be a very good facilitators so that they can mold themselves, which is nothing but a self-learning component which should be inculcated. So end of the day, concluding with the session, the best practices, what we heard from our panel experts is that we should go from conventional learning to progressive learning. So when we say it is a progressive learning, the class should be very interactive. In the sense, you should make sure that we are with the students, and we also know that the students also come up with their own questions to point out and say that how good they are with the concepts that they have learned. And also we know that the reusability of the code, the different ways, the logical thinking, basically for computer science or information science or in IT, what we see is that the reusability. Can you interpret the same thing using some other data structures? Can you implement a data structures with this? Can you replace this memory with something else? So when we have a design prototype, is it possible that you must design another prototype of a similar kind so that you get a better knowledge of it? The student should be motivated to do with these things. And also one good question, one good solution, what was posted by Murali sir was that leave the students to formulate the statement of the problem, right? So that also mentions that you mention what are the constraints of the problem. You mention what are the constraints that you have released in the problem. So what is your expected outcome? But the practice, let's be the practical sessions that are happening today is that we have 15 programs, the outputs are known. For the given output, we are writing the programs, which is not right. We never have any outputs for that. It is the logical thinking. First formulate the problem, write a program, then analyze the output, whatever you have got. Now, we will never say that the output is wrong. We have to say that we have to analyze the output for what are the cases that it is working successfully. Why is it not working for the other conditions? I think this is the best message that our panel experts have given to the teachers of computer science and information science. And as Satish sir said, I would like to tell upon the attention curve, right? Attendance, I can see that the peak in the beginning, if a teacher takes the attendance in the beginning, it is 90%. So end of the day, if the teacher has not taken the attendance at the last, it would be 90% for the attendance. But make sure that 30 to 50 minutes, between 30th minute to 50th minute, how interactive the session would be, right? So the last 10 minutes, the student should be munching of the information that is given by the teacher and trigger their minds to think, what should we do next? I think this is what we are conveying in this panel discussion. I really respect all my panel experts for sharing their experience as teachers, for sharing their knowledge of how to be a good teacher. Thank you all, and special thanks to our Director IIIT Allahabad, Dr. P. Nagbhushan, and thanks to our Director, Professor T.J. Ramamurthy, being more interactive. And it's always, we are blessed to have such models with us so that we can move in the right direction. Thank you very much. And again, I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, madam, and also the panel members. It is said that meaningful discussions never end, but they are paused for time being. We will continue the exploration and journey for a few more days. There is a saying that if a teacher does not benchmark in teaching, students will leave some mark on their benches. So just go far. So thank you, Professor Sahana Gowda, for steering the panel of stalwarts. It was a difficult job to balance, three for pulling, someone was pulling in one direction, and sometimes they used to come, in another direction. So you have done a wonderful job, madam. And I also thank, Professor Subhash Kulkarni, Professor Murli, Dr. Satish Kumar Singh for accepting our invitation and being part of this 1 week FTP. I thank participants for joining us and taking active participation in the event. So kindly join the day 3 session tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Thank you one and all. Jai Hind.
Along with the co-panelists, I congratulate Dr. Sahana Gowda for this wonderful job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.